What is going on YouTube? Chrono here and welcome back to another PSO2 video. So today we're going to talk about these 3-star weapons, or actually just these low rarity weapons that have just all of a sudden crashed their way into the meta. How strong are these weapons really? What are they doing for us? Should you really go after one? And is it like totally blowing your Kaiser out of the water? All these things are questions we're going to answer today. But before we jump into that, guys, normally I have a whole spiel for you guys, but I'm going to skip over that and just mention, hey, we've got a new Discord. It'd be super cool if you guys joined into that Discord. It's going to be primarily focused community basis, where we're not going to be tossing a ton of information or a ton of random stuff at you guys. It's a lot of opt-into alerts instead of just being alerted by everything that's going on. So it should be a lot smoother of an experience overall. Let me know if you guys have any suggestions for it. Hopefully I can actually speak properly. It's a lot easier to do via text instead of having to talk out loud. So anyway, let's go ahead and jump into today's video. So what is it I'm talking about, these 3-star weapons? If you have been living under a rock, or maybe you just don't follow PSO2 content that closely, you probably haven't noticed that the 3-star weapons have actually made a resurgence back into the meta. So we're going to pull up 2 weapons here. So let's grab, let's do wands, and then we'll use soaring blades. So with the most recent update, we had the ability now to upgrade 1 to 6-star weapons up to plus 60. Actually, limit broken all the way to plus 60, with potentials going upwards of level 5, which does make a pretty substantial difference now in usability for a lot of different weapons. Weapons that previously were just completely unusable, like the Kukurosiad after we moved into Kavaris, now have a place being used in Trinitas if used properly. Now, completely throwing when you use one of these, now you can actually get some use out of it if you happen to have, let's say, a high fixa version or just a crazy augmented setup for your weapon. You can actually get some use out of it for that piece of content. However, the weapons we're going to be looking at are all the way back here, the 3-star weapons that we got back in Alio. Kind of crazy to think about, right? Well, these 3-star weapons previously had some pretty wild potentials. Defensive formation would give you potency, and then you got crit hit rate based on defense up to a maximum of 1000 before. Well, now that maximum is 1200, and that crit chance is 27%. Well, before, while that was good, what makes it absolutely insane is now we have add-on skills that are increasing our crit chance and our crit damage baseline. Meaning that if you have maxed out crit chance and crit damage, you by default already have 15% crit chance and you have an extra 10% crit damage, which is insanely powerful when you also add on the fact these weapons can increase your crit chance up to a maximum of 27%. However, again, there's a caveat with that. You have to have enough defense value, or in the sake of the Trolls Day, enough offensive value to make that work. It's 2400 offense and 1200 defense. So it's kind of crazy to get those values at the moment. You really can't get them offhand. It's not the easiest thing in the world to do, but that means these weapons aren't completely useless. Actually, these weapons, these 3-stars, kind of blow a lot of these other weapons in between out of the water. Right now, as far as usable weapons, you've got the 3-star weapon here, you've got the Kukurosiad that's pretty solid here, and then afterwards you're really only looking at things like, I mean, Evil Orbit maybe, but just Kaiser, Rugged, and then eventually the Obsidia weapons that are probably going to be very easy to get a hold of from future content. Those are really the only weapons you're looking at. While the other weapons do have some usability, they're not completely throwing anymore, you can use them, they are going to be weaker than these other options that are available, especially this crazy 3-star situation. Like, there's almost no reason to look at any of these other weapons. Even if you're like, let's say you're someone who is going through the game right now and upgrading gear, getting this to even what limit broken to 50 is actually pretty substantial. Getting limit broken to 60 and getting all that extra base damage, and then on top of that being able to push its potential up higher, is actually pretty freaking insane. Now, how strong are these weapons really? Warning, this is going to be a bit of a flashbang, but in a previous video we did cover a damage calculator and we're going to use it today. So your warning has been set, here it comes. So if you didn't get a chance to go over that video, I'm going to leave a link in the video description to how this works, but TLDR is this actually takes all of your stats into account along with your fixes as well as your augments and compares them with other weapons. We're going to go ahead and we're going to uncheck anything we don't need. So we're going to keep Kukurosiad, Theseus, Trolls, we're going to uncheck the Codec, uncheck Evil Orbit, and then we're going to keep the Kaisers here. I mean, we're uncheck Kaiser MK1. We'll leave it. As I feel like enough people have them, it's worth leaving. So I'm going to toss this over here, and then on the left hand side we've got an augment setup. Now, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to put us in the best case scenario, right? I'm going to give us maxed out stats. I would recommend you doing this with your actual, add-on skills against average enemies. We're going to have a bossing chick. We're going to have this set to just like, let's say farming Alnoth right now, right? Alnoth is level 60 enemies. We're farming Alnoth right now. See how this actually works out. We've got bouncer set as our class, of course. Player level is 65, so we're good to go there. How strong are these weapons? Now, this is compared against my Kaiser augmented. This would compare this with the same augments. So this is going to be with the exact same augment setup. How strong are these weapons right now? So this, I believe, is the strongest augment setup you can get at the moment. I don't know if you actually want to tool. Like, this actually favors the 3 stars a lot more because they have higher variance. I'm sorry, I guess lower variance overall. Essentially, they have a lower floor for their damage. As you can see, wait, hang on. Does it not show variance? I swear it showed variance before, right? It's not being shown anymore. Oh, it's right here. I'm just completely blind. Yeah. So they have a 70% variance as opposed to the 7 stars that have a 50% variance. So your damage floor is much higher than the 7-star weapons, meaning that running things like raw damage actually gets a bit more value. So with this new augment setup, even having it be better for Kaiser weapons, it actually even better favors these lower star weapons as well. And if we look at our comparison over here, which actually, let me show you guys. It's basically, it's just this augment setup for everything, right? And it's the new 7-star units. However, if we want to go something more realistic, let's give my old unit setup. Let's do that. So we're Untitled Soul 3. We're Deft Might and Alts Secreta. So this was the old unit setup. So we're going to make this make as much sense as possible for what most people, I feel like, would have if they went all in. If they were even looking at something like this, like what they would have. So this is the exact augment setup I currently use. This is pretty much my exact build right now. Minus the add-on skills. Add-on skills are just maxed out for this situation. But as you can see, it's still, it still favors, I mean, Kaiser, or I guess the previous augment setup was still favoring, higher damage overall. But as you can see here, when we look at comparisons, these weapons actually aren't far behind, which is kind of crazy. And then when you add fixes into the mix, they start to jump ahead by a pretty wild margin. Specifically when you look at Fixa Termina. Now, Fixa Termina is crit damage. Because we have crit chance now that's higher than like, what, 5%? Let me see. Actually, I'm curious. If I were to turn off our crit chance and our crit damage. Oh, whoops. Let me pop back over. As you can see, this not nearly as, as brutal. But when we're toggling these on, we're getting extra crit chance and we're getting extra crit damage. All of a sudden, this flies past what we had previously. And when you think about us spending all these time building Kaisers for a 3-star at max Fixa to give extra damage, that's that easy to build, it kind of gets a little wild, right? Now, people have done damage comparisons on actual targets, actual enemies, and realistically, they are almost equal. The extra Fixa Termina setup, in most cases, you're not getting the full value of of the augments that are being used, because you do need to have the extra defense as well as the offense for these weapons to work the way they're showing. So to get the extra crit chance value, you do need to have the actual values, basically the minimums of the values you needed. It's not a situation where you don't get any of the crit chance. It's like up to a certain amount, right? It's based on your defense overall. So you can get a good amount of crit chance just by having this weapon equipped and having it set up. So when you actually do a damage test, we found that these are about even. It's kind of crazy to think about, but these 3-star weapons are fairly powerful. There's a caveat with that, however. This is against a level 60 enemy, right? Let's say we're fighting something like a Gigantix. Let's swap over to Gigantix. Well, now you can see that there's a bit of a damage difference. Because we're fighting higher level enemies, defenses take into account, and they do cause these weapons to do worse. Meaning the higher level the enemies get, the worse these weapons are going to do. But we can kind of mess around with that just a little bit. Let's go customize. Let's say we're fighting enemies that are in the next region, right? Let's pop to the next region. Let's say level 70. Let's say we're level 70 though. Well, now it's not nearly as bad. However, it's still getting worse. Now, these values are based on estimations, if I remember correctly. So just keep that in mind when we're looking at this. But we're level 70 now. These values are getting worse. Realistically, we'll be 70 when the next region comes out. The enemies will be about 70 with us. They'll probably be around 65, 70. So let's say we're 65, right? Let's say enemies are 65. Value's still pretty solid where we're 70 and they're 65. But the moment they start getting higher level, let's say they get on level with us, run into a problem. Let's say we're fighting a Gigantix, running into a problem. Like it's one of those situations where it is good, but it's not the end all be all. It may be not something you want to chase specifically for your build setup, but say you're setting up like an alt character or setting up alt weapons. This can be very, very powerful. It is a bit of a meme. We're not 100% sure that these are going to continue to be very powerful because the newer weapons, of course, are going to have higher star rarities. They're going to have new potentials, and these weapons eventually are going to fall behind. But this is something that's kind of interesting to look at because it's possible that they may do something like this in the future for things like your Kaiser weapons or the 7 stars of the current region. So it may not be worth getting rid of weapons all the time. They could be, useful in the future. That's kind of all I wanted to really show this time around, like kind of how you can use this tool to like take a look at this and realistically how strong these weapons are. They are a bit of a meme. They are very powerful. They are extremely close, but it does not mean that they're going to blow your current weapon out of the water. Maybe if you're someone who is using, I don't know, let's say for example the evil orbit on your class or on your as a choice, then you can see that these weapons are stronger than your evil orbit most likely. Let me get this back down to actual values that we were used to using. You can see that it's stronger than your evil orbit, but not by like an insane margin that you actually have to break everything to go ahead and get set up. But realistically, these weapons are, in actual use, like outside of napkin math, realistically they're probably about even to a little bit weaker than your Kaiser weapon. And then that's not even considering rugged. If you pull rugged into the equation, you get maybe 1 or 2 fixes, then you probably just want to walk away. Don't even look at using these weapons for most of the rugged weapons that are available. Anyway, guys, let me know if you guys have any questions. We'll toss in the comments below. Like if you guys enjoyed the video, subscribe to keep up with more. Let me know if I personally missed anything. Maybe I got something wrong. Be more than happy to toss a pinned comment in, or maybe use it as information for the next video. Thanks for watching. Take care, everyone. Peace out.